Welcome back, Pokemon trainers, to the Lanarkan mid-season showdown, the second of two this weekend. And we've got our top four from this mid-season showdown getting ready to go. But just before we get into that, there's something else we wanted to have a little bit of a different kind of shout out to. And I think, Charlie, I'll let you take the lead on this one with your new podcast.
Well, very briefly, yes, thank you very much for that invitation, Ben. Chisingdra Chats, a show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokemon community, discovering the 6 Pokemon on their dream team along the way. Exactly what it says. You just, apologies about that. We have a new guest each week and we learn a little bit about their life story and the 6 Pokemon that's special to them in some way, not necessarily the most competitively viable. We get to learn a little about them, and I think sort of Pokemon a trainer picks says a lot about them themselves as well, and fun community questions coming in too. It's weekly, people from all over the competitive community and hopefully outside competitive soon as well, from Trading Card Game Go as well as VG and even Unite. So yeah, make sure you're tuning in. New episodes drop every Wednesday.
Definitely have a look. Yeah, absolutely. Because I've been watching along every single week, and I've had a lot of fun watching it.
Oh, well,
it's been great to. I've learned so much about people that I actually know quite well. Coming out of this, because we talk about the competitive aspects when we're interviewing players at regionals, internationals, etc. But we don't get the time to have that deep dive into the person behind the Pokemon, and I think that's what Charlie's podcast does really, really well.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate it. So, get tuning into that if you would like. I'm Chisingdra on all social media. Chisingdra is the YouTube channel as well. But we are here in Belgium, and we are shortly ready to get into our first of 2 top 4 matches on stream. And here they are. Joshua van Sandijk versus Pros Leermans. That is a Gallade on stream. Gallade was so good in the first day of the MSS yesterday, and it's here today as well. Will it be able to go all the way once more? We had a Gallade mirror in the finals. Pros is going to do everything they can to try and stop that from happening from perhaps a slightly more familiar Ursaluna composition, but neither of these teams are what we would call standard or balanced.
No, definitely not standard, definitely not balanced teams that really do want to take advantage of everything that they have going for them, really leverage their offensive potential. Once again, just like yesterday, Joshua eluding us through the Swiss rounds, and we get to see him in Top Cut competing. He did very, very well in the mid-season showdown yesterday with exactly the same team. The Indeedee, Hatterene, Urshifu, Single Strike, Torkoal, Gallade, and Lilligant. And of course, Pros we saw earlier on today in that Golden Go mirror that he was playing, but it was the Ursaluna that was the star of the show in that matchup. Porygon 2 setting up the Trick Room, Ursaluna, well, just hitting things.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it does best, a bash bear. Golden Go mirror, but we saw nary a Golden Go come out on stream earlier. Perhaps we will this time. Though you've got the Torkoal to worry about there. Golden Go, pretty reflective surface, that, isn't it, as a Pokemon?
Yeah.
So, mirror is the operative word there. Porygon 2, I've been giving it a lot of shout-outs this weekend. We once again have Trick Room mind games going on here. Seems like the Belgian MSS is where the Trick Room all comes out. We haven't seen it too much in the regional championships, but here, lots and lots of Trick Room to go around. Now, Porygon 2 finds itself in an interesting position here, doesn't it? Because in the face of a Gallade, that's threatened by a fighting type move. You go Terra Poison, and it's threatened by a psychic type move. So, Porygon 2 possibly has the worst end of it this time, but that's where your other tools that Pros has available come in.
Well, I spent yesterday doubting Gallade. I'm definitely not a doubter anymore. But we're not going to see it coming out in the lead here. Instead, that Hisuian Lilligant that we spent some time discussing when we saw Joshua play this team yesterday is going to be coming out. I've been talking to him today. He has been favouring this Lilligant a little bit more than he was yesterday, and that's a nice way to adapt from one day's tournament to the next. You can just change things up and figure out a different way to maybe play your team even more effectively than once you were. As it stands, Incineroar and Porygon 2 have a little bit of a decision to make for Pros, because if you allow this Lilligant to go for maybe even a Sleep Powder, maybe an After You, then it could put you in a little bit of a difficult situation for that Porygon 2, or in fact Incineroar. I'm just going to have a little look at the team
Not holding
sheets
the
there.
safety goggles.
Not holding the safety goggles, so yeah, could be susceptible to that sleep powder.
Certainly could, and the Incineroar over on Pross's side of the field, the Terra option there is the Ghost, so if it is a close combat into that slot, then and the Incineroar goes to the Terra, go from being super effective to doing 0 damage. Fighting type, of course, does nothing to Ghost types. There's Sue Lilligant, slightly lopsided crown there. Enjoy the funky positioning of that. Torkoal is going to scout out for a turn. Incineroar attempting to fake out the Hisuian Lilligant there, so a wise option for the Terra. Close combat into the non-terra'd Incineroar, 100% accurate, unlike a Sleep Powder. Getting the defense and special defense drops, of course. Is that Incineroar going to have its Figgy Berry? No, it's just out of range of that.
Ooh.
So Terra Blast into the protected Torkoal. The Incineroar, that could work out playing against the Incineroar.
I think it will. And
Yeah.
no, I was a little bit worried in that turn that for Pross, whether or not the Trick Room was going to be going up in that turn, seeing the amount of close combat damage, putting it in range of an eruption from this Torkoal would have maybe put it into a difficult position, but it doesn't need to be in Trick Room. With the RDU coming out, Eruption going first, this Torkoal's getting a little bit more speedy, knocking out the Incineroar and doing more than 50% to the Porygon 2.
Porygon 2's virtual duck pond is getting more than a little lukewarm here after that eruption has boiled the water, but Trick Room has been able to go up. The question is, does Pross really want to do that? It depends what's in the back. Of course, Torkoal is now the slowest thing on the field, able to go for those big eruptions, but you can easily terrestrialize your Ogerpon. Wellspring that's just come out now to remove the neutrality to fire-type moves and get a special defense boost in the process. So the question is Joshua going to have enough tools in the back to be able to deal with the Ogerpon once if an eruption does go off and picks off the other pieces around it?
The problem you've got there is that Lilligant is in the sun. It's a grass type Pokemon. It's got Solar Blade that it has access to.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, great. Go for the Terra Water. You're going to be doing a lot less, or taking a lot less damage from the eruption at tick number 1. But tick number 2 never actually comes into the fore because you are at risk of taking that grass type damage.
Well, Terra coming out as perhaps predicted over onto Pross's side of the field, going to be the Ogerpon. Solar Blade is not going to be opted for this particular turn because Urshifu has switched in favor of the Hisuian Lilligant. There is that all-important special defense boost right now, but Torkoal can quite safely attempt to pick off this Porygon 2, which it does. And Ogerpon's still taking about a quarter of health from that. Very impressive indeed. Sun is up, so of course Ivy Cudgel not going to be doing as much damage as it would have done. It is boosted by the Terror, of course, coming into the Torkoal, meaning that its eruptions will not be half as effective because eruption, the damage output is affected by the amount of health you have remaining. And here comes another scary bear to face off against Joshua's own.
The switch there actually made quite a lot of sense. If you go for the Solar Blade or the close combat into the Ogerpon and it goes for the spiky shield, the Focus Sash on the Lilligant would have been broken. And I think that's something that Joshua was keenly aware of in that turn, and instead just playing a little bit more safely. The Urshifu coming in, it's carrying the Choice Band, can go for a Sucker Punch as well. And so, yeah, it doesn't have the Terra option to be able to maybe increase. Oh, no, it has Terra Poison. So the Urshifu could launch out some powerful Sucker Punches with a Choice Band. I wouldn't be shocked, depending on how this Ogerpon is trained, as to whether it would be knocked out from this range. Certainly potential after the Earth Power coming here, but a Swords Dance boosting up that Ursaluna. It's going to get the Flame Orb next turn, but that's a close combat. No Terra option available, no Terra Ghost available for it whatsoever, and it's going to go down in 1.
Ursaluna taken out before it can do anything other than a cheeky Swords Dance, not able to reap the benefits of that setup move, unfortunately. Urshifu so threatening on the field with that Choice Band. Really cool to see that over the Focus Sash. You've got to imagine, given that this is a Trick Room team, this Urshifu is built a little bit bulkier, and so the Focus Sash not so useful. Of course, Focus Sash allowing you guaranteed to survive on 1 HP as long as that slot isn't doubled up into, but if you invest in bulk, you can choose a different item in order to boost up something that maybe your Urshifu isn't so proficient in. And now Indeedee's here to provide some redirection. Urshifu's here, you can't protect in front of it. Joshua has given us a masterclass.
absolute masterclass. And now, yeah, the Ivy Cudgel, let's just check this while I'm talking. The Horn Leech as well are the two damage dealing options, both of them, of course, single target and can be redirected by the Follow Me. Choice band, close combat, as you say, can't be protected against, can't be spiky shielded against. And I think this is a wise play to sort of have this turn play out. It's going to give Prost the most amount of thinking time going into the next game because, yeah, I think just all the way through that match, here it is, the Ogerpon finally getting knocked out and Joshua taking the win. All the way through that match, Joshua was in the driving seat.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think Assyrian Lilligant, you see that in the lead, and you've got to cover for so many options. Is it going to try and put something to sleep? Is it going to try and secure a knockout with, be it Solar Blade or Close Combat, Solar Blade going off in one turn thanks to being in the sun, as long as Torkoal is on the field. And so trying to pivot around, especially because the Incineroar doesn't have access to the safety goggles, is so difficult to do. So it's a really good lesson in just the presence of a Pokemon being something to play around, whether you actually, whether it's actually going to be on the field or not.
Yeah, that's the thing is there's so many different ways that a Hisuian Lilligant can play, and given the fact that it's got Terra Ghost, I think that opens up all of the options as opposed to maybe it can double protect, or you can double protect in front of it and kind of see where things go in turn 2 rather than turn 1. But because that Lilligant can resist or become immune to the fake out, it just says, well, sometimes I'm going to sleep powder, sometimes I'm going to after you, sometimes I'm going to close combat, sometimes I'm going to do this. And you really got to be accurate when you're playing against it, especially when your team is naturally a little bit slower and more susceptible to these kind of fast threats. And certainly Torkoal going first and going for an eruption is a fast threat that you have to worry about, not just as much as when it's in Trick Room and you set it up so that the Torkoal can still carry on going first.
Right, for sure. And that's just that, we've just talked about the Assyrian Lilligant mode there, but then there are others like Indeedee Hatterene, we saw a lot yesterday at the Belgian MSS. Which of them is going to be setting up the Trick Room? Hatterene can then dish out massive damage there as well. Got Indeedee to redirect. So real uphill struggle, I think, for Prost to work out the game plan going in, what leads to go for. I think, even though the Incineroar doesn't have the safety goggles, you do have Golden Go that's good as gold ability. You have Amoonguss and you've got the Ogerpon Wellspring. As long as they don't terrestrialize, they're going to be immune to sleep powders. So having something lurking in the back like the Ogerpon, like we saw in game 1, could switch that in to catch a potential sleep powder. But then again, Lilligant could just go on the offensive. I wouldn't be surprised, though, heading into this game if we see Joshua completely switch up the leads and try and angle for one of the other modes the team offers, potentially the Indeedee Hatterene, for example.
Could be a good strategy. I think once you've got a game in your favor, you can really switch things up and try something different, because you've got an opportunity for it not to go as well as in game 1. But no switch ups here. Torkoal and Lilligant, Hisuian form, of course, coming out. There's that Golden Go that you mentioned paired up with the Ogerpon.
Yeah, Golden Go is now in a really threatened position, being a steel type in the sun, facing down a Torkoal. Of course, again, the Ivy Cudgels aren't going to be doing as much damage, but any damage is useful against a Torkoal that can have its health bar dwindled and the eruptions at that as well. Golden Go potentially could still be having a Terra forced out of it, or you could switch into something like the Incineroar in order to take something like an eruption so much better. But again, both Golden Go and Ogerpon immune to the spores that can be coming out here. But as we've been saying, this Lilligant has so many tricks up its chlorophyll-bound sleeves.
We're going to see a Terra kicking off this turn. Golden Go with the Terra, a defensive play, making sure that that Steel-type Pokemon is no longer taking at least super effective damage, but that Torkoal is still going to be putting on pressure to the board. Follow Me taking away any damage-dealing moves, but not the sleep powder.
After you, potentially, but it's actually the Solar Blade that's going to be coming out. That's going to be going down into the Ogerpon. A neutral hit here, but it was no After You coming out from Lilligant. That is such a cool animation. Ogerpon brought down to about a quarter of its health. Mega Rain going off first, dealing a lot of damage to the Lilligant, brought down to its Focus Sash. thanks perhaps to the critical hit, although Lilligant is not the bulkiest Pokemon. Torkoal, though, with its health a little bit reduced now, so Eruption not hitting quite as hard, but in fact, it's going to be the Heat Wave just in case of any unexpectedly high damage rolls that could be coming out on that Pokemon. And Heat Wave enough now to pick up the knockout onto the Ogerpon. Golden Go, its health, well, thanks to the leftovers, brought down to about 50%.
If that was the Ivy Cudgel and the Shadow Ball going into the Torkoal, Heat Wave definitely would have been the play. I think they're probably the health range that Torkoal's at the moment. Eruption and Heat Wave, pretty similar. Eruption doesn't miss, of course, in the way that Heat Wave can potentially, but that wasn't a factor coming into this turn. And a really clever play going for the Solar Blade, just doing a lot of extra damage. If it was the Ogerpon that had decided to Terra, then it would have been knocked out in one that turn. But now that the Golden Go's Terra'd, it's opened itself up to being hit for neutral damage by Grass-type moves like Solar Blade, and so Hisuian Lilligant is on the field looking pretty difficult to be able to deal with quickly.
Well, it's going to be Ursaluna not liking the face of what's threatening it right now. A Moongus coming in. Really bold switch given there could well be a Heat Wave coming in. But Torkoal is going to be leaving the fields here as well in favor of Urshifu joining the fray. Of course, it will be the single strike variant. Solar Blade charging up, presumably.
This is into the Amoongus.
Yeah.
It could be hit by the Rocky Helmet.
No, but it's going into the Golden Go, the Terra Fairy Golden Go, which is going to be taking the remainder of its health bar. That is also the Terra option for Pross down. Still up Joshua's sleeves, come out later on in the game though.
And Amoongus gets to switch in. It's going to be able to redirect any attacks away from Ursaluna, but Pross, playing the bait here. It's like, hey, here's a big, dangerous, threatening Pokemon, and just trying to switch that out to get a little bit more of an advantage, knock out the Hisuian Lilligant, and then play the game from there. As it stands, I think as bait goes, not as good as other options maybe, because Ursaluna likes to protect itself more commonly. I think that made it more easy for then Joshua to commit to the Solar Blade into the Golden Go instead. But of course, that's the Pokemon that you've got at your disposal. You've got to give it a go. Yeah,
and you've got to fear this Ursaluna as well, because it does have the Swords Dance up its sleeves. Solar Blade is going to be connecting down into the, well, in fact, can't be redirected by the Amoongus, thanks to being a grass type. So Solar Blade just going into the Ursaluna there. Super effective hit. Not enough for the knockout here. Wicked Blow following up. Can't be redirected because Urshifu is not a grass type, so it is affected by the Rage Powder that Amoongus threw out at the start of the turn. Getting the recovery thanks to Citrus Berry. Of course, it cannot switch out and recover thanks to Regenerator, being one of the final two Pokemon left on the field. Facade not boosted at that point by the burn, the Flame Orb not having activated yet, but now Guts as well as Facade has been boosted. Looks like the writing's on the wall. Huge congratulations to Joshua for clearing up that set against the fantastic Pross.
Pross really just, I think, struggled to have the tools available to him to be able to deal with all of the options that Hisuian Lilligant was kicking out there. But equally, you've got to give Joshua credit for the accuracy of his play, going for not the sleep powders, accuracy in two ways, right? Not going for those moves that have a chance of missing, instead just trying to leverage as much as possible those moves which give him an advantage every single time, knowing that the matchup was enough in his favor to be able to use that Hisuian Lilligant in game two. Let's talk about all of those Solar Blades. They did so much damage.
They really did. So much potential that Hisuian Lilligant can go for. It didn't even click Sleep Powder once in the set that we just saw. And it goes to show it's quite a frail Pokemon, hence it was holding the Focus Sash, but goes to show the options that it can provide you with if you get it in the right position. And I think that is a really big if. Joshua played it so well there, but you cannot expect every game that you play with Hisuian Lilligant to go that well. You can pivot around, make sure that you neutralize that threat. I really like how Pross tried to adapt, going for the Ogerpon and the Golden Go lead in order to be immune to sleep powders that could have been coming out. Seemed like yesterday was Gallade's day, but today, could it be Hisuian Lilligant's?
It could be. Well, it could also be Gallade's.
It could also be Gallade's, yeah, true.
It could be, so we'll see. I mean, Joshua makes his way to the finals as well, and has an opportunity to play against the other player that will be joining him in the finals. We're going to be able to find out who that is as well, because we have the opportunity and the time to be able to stream both of the top 4 matches in this mid-season showdown before we get, of course, into that grand final.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Joshua was our other finalist yesterday.
Yes.
Yes, so potentially Joshua could turn being a finalist yesterday into being the champion today here at the mid-season showdown. So all of these stories are building and building over the entire weekend. And Joshua, I mean, first of all, huge congratulations for reaching the final both days here at the Larnacan MSS. Larnacan, sorry, my pronunciation, my Belgian needs to be brushed up on a little bit there, but especially with this team composition that is really quite hard to pilot successfully. And Joshua just seems to have it down, seems to know exactly what to do with it.
It's one of those builds that's so powerful. So powerful, in fact, that we're going to have to take a little bit of a breather before we get into our next top 4 game. So stick around, trainers. We'll be right back with our second top 4 at the Larnacan mid-season showdown.
That was close.
Close.